The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Jesus had crossed in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him. He was by the sea. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came to Jesus when he saw him. He fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her so that she may be well and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now, there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhaging for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had. She was no better. She grew worse. So she heard about Jesus, came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. And she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately, her hemorrhaging stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed from her disease. Jesus, immediately aware that power had gone from him, turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you? How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell before him and told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "My daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Now, while Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, but believe." Jesus allowed no one to follow him. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." They laughed at him. Then Jesus put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took the little one by the hand and said, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, get up." Immediately, the girl got up and began to walk about. All were overcome by amazement. Jesus strictly ordered them that no one should know this and told them to give her something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Wisdom. Wisdom. What is wisdom? Some define things by giving an example. I offer to you now some pearls of wisdom. It is said that politicians are like the clouds. When they disappear, everything becomes clear. Words of wisdom. I focus on wisdom at the beginning of this time to break open the Word together with you because there is an underlying theme of wisdom today in all of the readings. The first reading from the book of wisdom, so very directly related to this wonderful gift from God, wisdom, fullness of knowledge. In the book of wisdom, which we understand was written by Solomon, King Solomon, we hear some profound words. King Solomon is an interesting man of history, known in secular and religious worlds. It's still said to this day that those who have great knowledge have the knowledge of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon. In the second reading, the second letter of Paul to the Corinthians, there is more profound insight, wisdom. And in the gospel, words of wisdom, yes, but with Jesus, as always, wise actions. So let's break this open, shall we? Let's go back to the first reading, and let's look at what Solomon tells us in the book of wisdom. God did not make death. God fashioned all things that they might have life. God formed us to be imperishable, but by envy, death entered the world. Envy, death. Is that not true? Envy is a destructive thing. It is not life-giving. It is not life-sustaining. This bit of wisdom and the notion of the destructive power of envy holds true as we consider the Corinthians readings from Paul. Let's listen again. Though Christ was rich, he became poor for our sake, so that by his poverty we might become rich. Not that others should have relief while we are burdened, no. Our abundance should supply others' needs, and others' abundance should supply our needs. It's a matter of equality. I find it interesting in the translation we use today, it left out that line. It's a matter of equality. Our abundance and others' abundance. Again, it makes sense, doesn't it? Common sense, but it is wise. It's wisdom straight from St. Paul and from Christ. What enriches others can simultaneously enrich us as well, and vice versa. It's the ultimate win-win situation. But related to what Solomon says about envy, what impedes this selfless action? Envy. Envy. What is envy? Envy is a longing aroused by someone else's possessions or qualities. If you look at the course of human history, at every civilization, at every form of government, all have had elements of the haves and the have-nots. As part of unchecked human nature, we seem to need or feel the need that we are better than others. Just look at what's happening in the world around us. Just look at what's happening in our own country. It is true today, the haves and the have-nots. The human nature to want to possess more and more. It was true yesterday. It's true in every decade. It's true in every century. As individuals and as nations, envy is a constant. We want for ourselves and our country the best of everything. That's not a bad thing. But put another way, we don't mind helping others as long as they don't have as much as we have. So when we hear our abundance should supply others' needs, and others' abundance should supply our needs, and that is, it is a matter of equality, we resist that. In fact, that looks to me like communism. There's great wisdom also in today's gospel. As usual, Jesus' wisdom are not just words of wisdom. His very actions are wise, and he is inviting us by his actions to emulate them. Jesus' words and actions plant seeds of wisdom. Jesus' healing of the two daughters symbolizes Jesus' healing of the two extremes in Israel, the haves and the have-nots. On the one hand, those hopelessly outcast and oppressed by the religious establishment. Today, that was represented by the woman who was hemorrhaging. For 12 years, she was shunned by the community. She was considered filthy and unclean. She was not equal. She was one of the have-nots. On the other hand, the daughter of the respectable synagogue official was one of the haves. Those among religious and civil authority in those days, the religious and civil or Roman authorities, got special attention, special care. Sounds familiar. Jesus' teachings are that we are to emulate him by removing divisions among us. Jesus treated equally the haves and the have-nots, the privileged and the underprivileged. We are always challenged to apply Jesus' teachings of 2,000 years ago to our world today. So I ask, what did Jesus' actions look like in today's language and world? He healed. Sounds to me like health care. He gave health care. Unlike today, Jesus did not consider the wealth or the status of the two he cured as to whether they would be healed or what level of care or cure that they would be healed by. He didn't consider their country of origin. He didn't consider their economic status. He didn't consider their age or gender or whether they were gay or straight. And therefore, as a healthcare provider, whether or not he should heal them. As some professionals today will not heal or will not serve the gay community. Jesus provided healing to all, not just the haves, but the have-nots too. As the scripture said, it was a matter of equality. Jesus touched all. So should we. Now that's wisdom.